Hi everyone, for our presentation today, Carina and I want to use this participatory study in order to investigate a debate that has two really strong opinionated sides and compare our experiences within these opposing groups. So see if one group was more welcoming, if one group was more critical, and overall just how our experiences differed within these groups. So for this reason, we decide to choose vaccines, which, especially now because of COVID, both sides are particularly active. And now a lot of people who may not have had a stance on vaccines are exposed to both of these sides and are able to take a stance on the matter. To begin with, I took the stance of the anti-vax movement. I began my research on Facebook, and right away I noticed that there were a lot of groups run by parents with names like Anti-Vax Moms and Parents Against Vaccine. I also noticed that a lot of the groups were private, which means that only members of the group could see the other members. They could also only see their posts, and this safety protocol is usually used in order to ensure that members were all a part of the anti-vax movement and not just individuals joining the group to mock the movement's ideology. Before joining any group, I thought it was important for me to educate myself a bit more on the movement, so I decided to look under the hashtag anti-vax on Facebook, and I noticed that there were 4 distinct themes for the anti-vaccination posts on Facebook, which were trust, alternatives, safety, and conspiracy. I decided to join 2 different groups, one which was a private group called Vaccines Exposed and one which was a public group called Anti-Vaccine, the Voices of America. Something I noticed right away with the private group Vaccines Exposed is that they also accepted pro-vaxxers in order to hear opposing views. I noticed this group was very informative, posting links and blogs. I also found that the groups were extremely responsive and active to one another. There were between 15 to 20 posts a day. There were 12.9 thousand members within the group, which is by no means a large community on Facebook. You can see here some of the examples of the links that were provided, which were extremely beneficial in order to look into the movement and really form your own opinion. As I mentioned before, they accepted pro-vaxxers also into the movement, and I thought this really created an open dialogue where every member felt comfortable responding to one another. So in this example here, you can see there was a pro-vaxxer that posted about making flu shots mandatory, and 2 anti-vaxxers, Monica and Jamie, responded with their own experiences, which they clearly felt comfortable because of the open environment. In fact, in order to ensure that this was a very respectful environment, the group's admin actually posted a set of rules which were pinned to the top of the page to ensure that any new member would immediately see them. There were rules for both the pro-vaxxers as well as the anti-vaxxers. Some of the rules included no doxing, which is basically a personal attack on individual members within the group. Because of the respectful environment, I felt comfortable right away posting within the group saying I was a new member and I want to educate myself more on the movement. I was very surprised. I actually received 115 comments, all of which were very personal, respectful, and educational. I received multiple comments from individuals who actually were pro-vax, and they told me that they were raised by anti-vax parents, and as they grew up, they became more skeptical and looked deeper into it and decided to change their opinions and are now pro-vax. I also received several responses from anti-vaxxers, all of which were very lengthy and educational. They provided me with a lot of information. One mentioned about Bayer and Monsanto, which I ended up looking up, and I had never heard of that before, and I would not have otherwise. I noticed that there were a lot of online petitions being shared within the group, which are considered one-click online protests because of the ease and accessibility. Some of the names included lists of Canadians against mandatory vaccines, which had over 120,000 participants. I myself did not participate, but this is a significant number. In the second group, I joined Anti-Vaccine, the Voice of America, which was a public group. I noticed right away that the posts seemed much less educational. They involved emojis and crude language, as well as a bunch of different memes. I'm not surprised that this was a much more hostile environment because of the fact that this group is public, so you don't have to be a member to post within the group. And this allows more opportunities for people to actually attack others' opinions, and it's a much less respectful environment. I personally was a little concerned to actually post within the group. I was a little nervous that I myself would be attacked, but I did ask if there were any blogs or website suggestions that I could research in order to educate myself more on the movement. On this post, I only received 2 short responses with names of doctors that they told me to look into, and they didn't provide me with any links, which did not encourage me to dig deeper into this information. So here you can see there's an individual that actually called out 2 members of the group saying that they were just trolls trying to upset the community, and this is quite a direct post and I think really adds to the hostile environment. I also noticed that Facebook flagged a lot of the content for false information. I decided to investigate the nature of the posts and whether the groups were using certain tactics, and I noticed that they used negative campaigning. This group used attack ads to put down the Pro-Vaxx movement rather than actually promote their own ideology. Overall, my experience within this group was quite negative. I noticed that there were a lot of attack ads, as I mentioned before, and the environment was very aggressive with people attacking each other in the comments of their posts. This did not make me want to participate, and it also did not encourage me to actually look deeper into the movement.
As Julie had mentioned, we decided to utilize Facebook as a participatory platform. I found in a study recently conducted that anti-vaccine pages have fewer followers than pro-vaccine pages, but are more numerous, faster growing, and increasingly more connected to undecided pages. That being said, I actually struggled to find pro-vax groups that had a large number of members. And additionally, there were significantly less of the groups to join. Also, the vast majority of the groups in support of vaccinations were public, whereas Julie found that most of the anti-vax groups were private, which I found rather interesting. After conducting research on Facebook, I joined one public and one private group. The public group I joined was called Vaccines Save Lives, and the private group I joined was called Just Pro-Vaxx. The public group I joined had 6.5K members, and upon initial involvement, I noticed that the group was highly active. Much like Julie's research, the public group was willing to listen and respond to what anti-vaxxers had to say about the movements. So there were 3 main types of commentary in these groups. The first one was introductions. The second was factual information with links providing evidence of the research. And the third was responses to common questions regarding vaccines. So like Julie, I initially decided to post an introduction about who I was and why I had joined the group, and I was surprised to have received 21 responses. Overall, the responses were not persuasive or argumentative. However, there were a few that made me feel a little more uncomfortable. These were ones that were in response to the COVID-19 vaccine in specifics, arguing that they felt the vaccine should be mandated worldwide. In general, the group was very inclusive and highly active, with the majority of posts being factual and educational with sources and references listed in each discussion. Even though the group mentioned it was inclusive towards anti-vaxxers, I did not see any postings from this side of the argument. So in the private group that I joined, I had an entirely different experience. There was more of a cult-like feeling. For example, when I originally had requested to join, the first thing that the page said was, if anti-vaxxers sneaks in, then you're gonna have a bad time. So although I participated in this group, when doing so, I did not feel welcome or included. Unlike the public group where anti-vaxxers were welcome to engage in the conversation as long as it was friendly and not hostile, this group, even though it was private, shared a lot less factual information and was way more opinion-based. For example, there were numerous opinion-based quotes, there were a lot of memes, and additionally, there were even songs posted in a lot of polls. So while Julie found that the public group she joined allowed members to attack each other's opinions and was a less respectful environment, I found the polar opposite, as my private group was much more dehumanizing and cult-like. The private group only allowed for contribution from members who were accepting of all vaccines and did not allow for people to engage if they mentioned vaccine hesitancy dialogue.
I found that my experience was much more negative overall, specifically because of the public group, which had a very hostile environment. They used a lot of negative campaigning and attack ads. I found that my experience within the private group was a bit more encouraging and made me want to participate a bit more just because they were providing links, and it seemed as if the environment was much more respectful. I also didn't create any personal relationships with any of the members within the group.
So my experience overall was very different when I look at it from the perspectives of the public versus private groups that I joined. The public group was very informative and encouraged me to do my research on my own. The people were very active in both groups, but within the private group, I felt as if I could not get a thorough analysis of the topic as the members were very hostile and opinion-based. And additionally, in the private group, people would shame those who supported the anti-vax movement and engaged in hostile behaviors. Additionally, I did not create any personal relationships, and there were lots of online protests and petitions in both of the groups.
As you guys can see here, both Carina and I had very different experiences within our private and public groups. I found that my private group was very informative and they provided me with a lot of useful links, whereas there was a lot of hostility within my public group because of the use of attack ads. Carina actually found that her public group was much more informative with fact-based research, and there was a hostile environment within her private group. If you guys are interested in looking further into the movement, here are some links provided. Thank you so much for watching.